my name is Ashton Greening. Today my informative speech will be on the history, styles, and cultural impact of jazz. I'm joined here today by two audience members, my mom and my dad. Rock, pop, rap, R&B. These popular and culturally significant music categories originate or take inspiration from a genre created by African American communities, jazz. Jazz tells a beautiful story of African American culture and the impact that Black folks have had on American history. My general purpose today is to inform. Specifically, I will be talking about the origin and creation of jazz in Southern America, as well as how jazz has evolved throughout each decade through the evolving style and significant musicians that define each style. In addition, I will also talk about the influence of jazz on American culture and modern music. I myself have been a musician for 8 years, and specifically a jazz musician for 4 years. In this time, I have learned about the history of jazz and the specific styles of jazz music. I currently play the tenor saxophone, which is very prominent in jazz, big bands, and improvisation. My saxophone here is also serving as my visual aid today. Show it. Jazz music is the foundation for all popular music genres today. Its roots trace back to African American communities, primarily in the South of America. I hope you all will find interest in learning more about the American history and how music has developed throughout the decades. To begin, I will cover how and where jazz music was created and developed. Jazz music is credited to have originated in New Orleans, Louisiana, USA. The music was shared and diversified by New Orleans' ethnically diverse neighborhoods and has helped African Americans through hardship. Jazz originated in New Orleans around the late 19th century. According to the website Jazz Observer, Congo Square, located in New Orleans, Louisiana, was a place for enslaved people to connect and play music. Slaves could come to Congo Square and play music, whereas in other cities and states in the South, they were not allowed to play. Jazz Observer also notes that the musical customs of West Africa and the harmonic chords and instruments of Europe were credited to be the structure of jazz music. Jazz music was also produced from the intertwining of church hymns, slave songs and chants, as well as rhythmic technique from Cuba. New Orleans served as a melting pot where many different influences developed and diversified jazz music. According to the Smithsonian Institution, quote, "The earliest jazz was not written down, but rather passed on orally among the musicians of New Orleans. This great seaport near the mouth of the Mississippi River was a mixture of African American, Anglo-American, French, German, Italian, Mexican, Caribbean, and American Indian musical influences." Referring back to the Jazz Observer, the Civil War era is additionally credited to have an influence on jazz musically and rhythmically. The drills associated with the marching band music from Civil War military forces heavily influenced the development of jazz in New Orleans. Blues and spiritual music was introduced to New Orleans by former enslaved people. Jazz music consists of many different subgenres that spotlight players. These genres share a common trait of jazz, improvisation. Jazz music is shaped by its diverse styles and the artists that have further popularized their culture. The most notable jazz players are recognized for their contribution and creation of different subgenres of jazz, or different styles. Jazz Music Archives 2011 credits Louis Armstrong with popularizing swing-style jazz, which spotlighted individual improvisation and led to the golden age of jazz in the 1930s and 40s. As jazz historians John Hasse and David Blumenthal explained, quote, "A classic song such as Summertime will sound different when sung by Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, and Sarah Vaughan, and then when played by Stan Getz, Miles Davis, Gil Evans, John Coltrane, and the Modern Jazz Quartet," end quote. Improvisation is a defining feature of jazz music. One of the first things I was taught in jazz music was how to improvise on top of the chord progression of the music. Improvisation is important in a jazz piece as it expands upon the original chorus of the song, adding a unique touch and more interest in this piece. Along with my saxophone here used as a visual aid, I also have my BFOT rulebook that I use for lessons. This contains a plethora of classical jazz songs or standard jazz songs, and in the music there are, of course, the rhythm, but also each chord progression of each measure. The Jazz Observer describes jazz as, quote, a genre that seems to embody musical freedom. While some subgenres do have a distinct sense of melody, harmony, and rhythm, many others include unexpected elements as a form of expression, end quote. Outside of the genre, jazz has inspired American culture both artistically and socially. Jazz has influenced music in the modern era with its unique composition while simultaneously helping shape social movements and education. Musical characteristics pioneered by jazz continue to influence modern genres such as hip-hop, rock, and blues. According to scholars Gerald Early and Ingrid Monson, quote, jazz has spawned an influential international lifestyle and attitude towards life, the hot, the hip, and the cool, that has attached itself to other forms of popular music like rock and hip-hop, end quote. The California Learning Resource Network 2025 explains that standard soloing in jazz, quote, became a key element of many genres, including blues, rock, and jazz fusion, end quote. Based on my experience playing jazz in Southern California, many districts value jazz education in their schools. During my time as a jazz student at Etowah High School in the Inland Empire, we attended multi-district jazz competitions throughout the year. Jazz music continues to appeal to the youth in their creative self-expression. Scholars Early and Monson also note that, quote, the Black Lives Matter movement has inspired a fluorescence of socially engaged artistic expression in jazz. In quotations, Terrence Blanchard's Breathless, popular music, Beyonce's Lemonade, and hip-hop, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, that models itself on the artistic vision of jazz. So, I hope you enjoyed and learned more about jazz and its formation in New Orleans, its most significant styles, players, and the importance of improvisation, as well as its influence on modern music and in the social sphere. Jazz is the pinnacle of American history and the intertwining of musical expression in society. Thank you.